Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the debut knife for Kizer's Premium X series. This is the Silverwing. So Kizer is introducing a super ultra premium tier for their brand. And I actually think this is really great. Kizer has done an excellent job in, kind of the mid-range, the start of the premium, cutlery area, and also the budget world. I think it just makes sense that they would tackle, a higher end. This X series undoubtedly caters to the enthusiast. It's fully functional. It has all of the elements you would expect from a functional knife, but a lot of what you're paying for here with this knife, and undoubtedly with future projects in their X series, a lot of what you're going to pay for is the extra elements, which knife enthusiasts love if they feel like they're getting their money's worth. What they're paying for is actually going into that. And this knife has a lot of that. I want to talk about this. I also want to open it up because it's got an interesting surprise on the inside. But it's a super cool knife for sure. Thanks so much to Kizer for sending this in. This is available. It's expensive, as you might have guessed by my intro, but it is available in a few different forms, including compound or non-compound blades, M390 or S90V blades. Interesting there, the price differences, but we'll talk about that. But it's available. I'll have it linked down in the description. You guys can check it out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and get through specs here real quick so we can open it up. Lengthwise, this, by the way, the designer lists as LF right here. I don't know who that is. It looks a lot like the Tuya Alamo. Is that the same person? Somebody brought that up in my live chat. I don't know because I can't find any extensive information on either knife. So the designer is LF. It could very much be the same person. You guys can let me know. A lot of you seem to know a lot more about some of these designers than I do. But I still want that name to be known in coordination with this knife, right? Or in reference to this knife. It's actually shorter than you might have guessed. It's not quite even 7.75. Yeah, it is. It is. I was off on the left end of my tape here. 7.75 inches. It carries, looks, and feels like a full-size 8-inch knife. I understand that's just a quarter-inch difference there, but yeah, it really does look, feel, and carry like a larger knife. Blade length is about 3.35. Cutting edge is about 3 inches on the dot. How about some size comparisons? Any custom sales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against a knife like the 8010 and the 8020.5, a little bigger, a little more robust than the 8020.5. Nowhere near the same size as the 8010. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. A little smaller than the PM2, a little bigger. The Para 3 actually has a little more cutting edge than the Spyderco PM2. A little bit more even ratios there. Almost said better. That's subjective. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue. I need to tighten the pivot on that guy. Ooh, the pivot's loose on that. Thinking about how many times I've deployed that, just in size comparisons. Anyways, I think it's actually the most similar to the Ritter Hogue in terms of the handle profile, blade length, and blade profile. I mean, obviously it's a different blade profile, but most similar. It's just a little bit shorter. How's the action on this knife? This is where we're going to get into it. So this is a frame lock. The action's fine. Like being able to deploy it, this is more of it's just like it's a lot like the Alamo. It's got to go more this way, right? So the reverse flick, pretty easy. Thumb flick, I think a lot of people are going to get frustrated trying to push up. You need to push more out, but it does work. Access to the lock bar, good. Pivot action, okay. I would expect it to be a little smoother. I think this will inevitably break in over time, right? But out of the box, on an X series, it's fine. Like it's plenty good. And when I unboxed this, I was so blown away by the milling, which we're definitely going to talk about. That can happen on a first impressions. Getting really excited and getting mentally fixated on one thing. And then that's why I separate the unboxing videos from my review videos, because the reviews, I've spent time with it. I've had time to like really sit down and consider a bunch of different things. And I realized, I was like, the action's like fine. It's just like, man, it should feel really special, right? So it's fine. If I was going to letter grade it, I'd give it a B. But at this price point, I kind of want, in 2025, I kind of want it to like blow my socks off, So it's fine. And it'll probably break in. What's so special about the internals? Well, I haven't actually been in there yet. We're going to do the hardware check. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel or the pinned comment. But these are T8, and it looks very simple to get into. T8 pivot and a single T8 body screw. Well, hold on. Yeah, T8 body screw. And then we're in. But inside the pivot, as it lists, I love, thank you so much, Kizer, for not putting a ton of Loctite on this, just a little bit. That's all you need. It's clearly blue Loctite. Just thank you for not being ridiculous with that. Some companies just cake it on there, and I mean, I don't know who's still using red Loctite in 2025, but that would suck. But this is one long body screw that's just been like rounded off at the other side. Now that should be essential. Whoops, it popped in the pivot collar out there. But that should be essentially it. We should be able to actually just get in here now. Okay, there we go. It wasn't really that hard. I was like lifting up on this end, and I needed to lift up on both of them, kind of evenly. But here's some interesting stuff on the inside. They have a lot of the information on the inside, which is really great. I wish so many other companies would do this. And this is something I've been harping on Kizer forever. I'm like, stop putting all these codes and all these things all over the blade. Like, let us look at it. They've done this for the X series, and that's cool. I think you guys should do that for all of your stuff. But I do like that. It's neat. You can see the milling in here. This is extensive. There's a lot of very intricate milling on the inside. You can see the screw for the pocket clip. These areas here are for the pins, right? Just some structural integrity and solidity to keep everything together. And then it appears also, we're going to take a look at these here in just a moment, that this piece is held in. This separate piece of titanium that has these sort of vents is actually held in with multiple screws that go just far enough into the material to hold it. Sorry, the backspacer fell off. But not peek through so that you have, the heads showing through on the other side. So this, let's get the blade out here. This is on roller bearings. Isn't that wild? So you have these big, like steel, whatever you want to call it, housing washers or whatever. And that way they're riding on steel. But yeah, they're like little, somebody called them like needle roller bearings or whatever. And in my experience, like roller bearings, I've experienced some Shoggoth knives with roller bearings that are pretty amazing. And at other times it's just like, it's okay. I don't know. It may be that they, like over a long period of time, are going to be better. I'm not really sure. I feel like a lot of times the most impressive bearings are the multi-row ceramic bearings, but there's a bunch of different factors that will contribute to better action over time. It is interesting. We certainly don't see them. I'm glad that they don't like fall out and roll all over the place. That was what I was trying to, figure out would happen. But yeah, that's what's on the inside. So that's neat. We typically do not see roller bearings. Not in the production knife world for sure. So that's pretty cool. I'm just going to skip forward and get this back together real quick. Okay, so I just want to point out, yeah, like this is unbelievably simple to take apart and put back together. It does have a lot of little, pieces, but to actually get in there, to do any type of maintenance and put it back together is super duper simple. It's definitely, what I said, just lifting both sides at the same time. You don't necessarily need anything like this, even though it's helpful. I did notice that this pivot collar, there's a little detent ball in here, and I have to imagine that's for alignment because it is a very designy pivot collar. So I think the detent, that little detent spot right there is to help you make sure that it's lined up correctly. It does seem to like want to stop kind of right there. So that's kind of neat. It just helps the pivot collar stay aligned, I guess, like while you're putting the pivot screw back in. The pivot barrel is also D-shaped, so it will not free spin. I do like that. Did this all come back together correctly? I think I have the pivot slightly tight there. But yeah, it did. So that's neat. So yeah, I think like while I was putting this together, I think this did actually curve a little bit. So you kind of, I guess you might have to fiddle with it a little bit to get it to line up, but I think that's the purpose of that detent ball. So if you do take it apart, I guess pay attention to that. But it's functional, so we're just going to go ahead and proceed with the review here. But interesting. It's nice to see the internals. There's a lot of complicated stuff here. And on the Kizer website, it says that each pair of scales has not per scale, but both of them together is 4 hours of CNC time, which is definitely more time and definitely more expensive than your average premium pocket knife. There's a lot here. It's not the most. I've definitely heard of much higher, CNC time, but 4 hours per knife. You can understand, a lot of people are going to be like, why are these limited? Why are these? 4 hours per knife is a lot, especially when you're a company like Kizer who's got like a bajillion different projects. So that's a lot of time. It's also expensive, despite these being made in China, right? It's still going to be expensive to do that much with titanium. So anyways, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. Really, I'm really impressed and really happy that this is so easy to disassemble and maintain. Anyways, 150, almost 160 thousandths, pretty thick blade. And then weight, that's a lot of titanium. Titanium, pivot colors are titanium. And then we have a little bit of a titanium backspacer, a little tiny titanium backspacer, the titanium pocket clip, right? Weight on this guy, 4.3 ounces, not bad considering you have, a 3.35 inch blade. Balance is actually right behind the pivot. It's perfect. It just feels really great. Okay, we've done the hardware check. We've done the weight. Let's go ahead and talk about the meat and potatoes here. By the way, did the action change at all? Not really, disassembling it or anything like that. But it did come back together absolutely perfect. I mean, it is super duper perfect there. As I stated in the unboxing, this reminds me a lot of the non-flipper XM18, which I love. Like, the ergonomic profile of this knife is very, very accommodating. So while it does have a lot of enthusiast and collector elements and all that, it's still very much a tool. And the frame lock, some people love them, some people hate them. I think they're just fine. Kizer knows how to do a titanium frame lock, and they lock up plenty fine, as long as you're not being abusive with it, right? But access to that lock bar, super comfortable, really nice. Edges knocked down. Kind of looks like a knife where you'd question, like, is it comfortable to hold? It looks like potentially there's a lot of edges here and there that could be sharp or uncomfortable. No, they knocked everything down. They knocked the jimping down a little too much, in my opinion. I think this should be a little more grippy. You just need more lines. You need more traction points here, because this is almost useless. It's comfortable because of the notch, right? It's really nice in combination with the index finger forward choil position. There's just not really any grip here. Maybe more so back here, right? And it's because there's more traction points. But out here, like, this area is essentially useless. So you need more lines in there. But the edge is all nicely knocked down. Really, truly comfortable. The pocket clip too. Easy in and out of the pocket. It's got a little bit of a bill. I wish they'd cut it off a little sooner, but okay. I mean, functionally, it's fine. And it doesn't create an ergonomic hotspot, at least not for me. I do like how everything looks, and like the thumb studs and this like titanium inlay here with the vents. Some people are not going to like this. It's just an aesthetic thing, but it's cool, and there's a lot of intricate work here. This is also radiused. This titanium is not flat. It looks like it is. I think maybe here you can kind of see it's radius. So it really is, like, there's a lot of like little inlay and little like areas here where they've carved this out and done some work here, and this area kind of comes up. But this is all contoured, so it's not on a flat surface. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because the machines required to do that are much more expensive machines, right? This is a much more complicated process to get it shaped like that. And that, whether or not you care about it, is one thing, right? Because you spend your money on what you want to. But it does factually cost more to create something like this, especially when you're going back and doing even more intricate work. This inlay, initially I thought it was off. It's just slightly raised all the way around. I mean, you can see the edge all the way around. So they did that intentionally. Kind of wish that they had done something to match this darker color on the other side. just little, I mean, you've got a little bit of room here and there. I understand, not a lot, because you have to have room for the frame lock, right? They did a lot of little interesting things, though, everywhere. Even though it doesn't have this matching darker piece anywhere on the other side, no part of this knife is lazy. Every part of this knife is interesting, right? For the people looking to spend money in this territory, that is what they're looking for, right? If you just want a basic functional tool, I mean, oh my gosh, you have roughly what, 10,000 choices between $20 and up to like 250 before you start getting into this territory. Yeah, you got a bajillion, like where it's all about function. You got plenty of choices. When you're spending money at this territory, you want the extra. The functional thing, it's like, yeah, great, fine, right? I trust you can do that part, but most of the people actually spending money in this tier want function plus. We want the extra. We want the embellishment. We want we want all the zazz and the sauce and all that, right? And they did a lot of cool stuff that's not typical at all of a Kizer knife. This is much more typical of like Riat or Maxace or Reich, which, those companies, when they're doing stuff like this, they charge not everything in their line is going to be up, at this price point, but they do charge prices that are very similar. Right? Sometimes we gets a little bit ahead of themselves, But yeah, this looks like something that Maxace may have produced or Riat, And again, it's not going to be for everybody, but it does cost a lot more. But it's nice that they did that, and it doesn't it's very comfortable, right? Nice looking profile, nice looking blade to handle ratio there. Really, really cool. So this one is S90V, and this is it looks like a machine satin. They also have like a hand rub finish. Then up here, it's just like a different type of machine satin finish. So we have this aggressive compound clip point blade, which is more expensive to do than your standard stuff. But so there's an entry version of this knife that is not compound. So you have standard non-compound blade or compound options. You have M390 or S90V. You'd think the S90V one would be the most expensive. Curiously, no. The M390 one is the more expensive one. The M390 compound, right? Weird. Has S90V suddenly become less expensive? I don't know. I would prefer to have S90V, but if you prefer M390, okay. It's just a little bit odd. I like that the thumb stud, which by the way is the stop, it's just even further reminding me of the XM18. I like the size of them, and I like that they clear the cutting path, right? So if you look like right here, it's just right by it, but it does clear it, which is nice. Very thin right here, thicker out here. It's it's exactly what you'd expect, but it's not like a change of angle. Like it's not. You don't have to you can just sharpen it like normal, which is cool. Some people are just not going to want the compound blade, which is perfectly fine. I mean, that's your choice here. But very, very comfortable. Nice tip. You get a little bit of added strength, I guess, doing it this way. We have the flat grind out here and the hollow grind here. But slicey, I mean, it'll do exactly what you'd expect it to do, right? It's going to cut, it's going to poke, it's going to do knife stuff, but it's doing it with style and with extra, which is just for the user to enjoy, right? And that's cool. I think they know. These are tritium slots. You can absolutely add tritium here, which I think is really neat. I wish we saw that a lot more. I love that there's no words or any unnecessary stuff on the knife. I love that. Kizer, I think, they're just like, hey, we want to make something that looks good. We're not going to put our info all over it, right? But it's also a very small percentage of their buying audience that would be interested in this stuff. So maybe that's why they're okay with not putting their logos all over the face. Whatever their reasoning, I'm glad that they didn't, because it looks so much better this way. I like this combination of gold, gray, darker gray, and satin. It looks very cool, very futuristic, very mechanical, I had somebody in the comments say that the knife looked unfinished. For the life of me, I cannot. That was a pretty isolated comment. It was the only one of its kind. I can't figure out what about this looks unfinished, but I suppose that's a matter of opinion. The back here, I love how this comes together. It's so detailed, right? And it's, a lot of people would say it's unnecessary, but that's what people are looking for at this price point. They want the unnecessary. Bring on the unnecessary. I want to spend more money. Can you add more unnecessary things to the aesthetic of this knife? And Kizer has said yes, right? Because those people exist. There's a market for it. Pocket clip, only right hand. It is not available for lefties. So that's a bummer. But yeah, like I said, in and out of the pocket, it's fine. I like that they detailed the area where it separates the frame from the frame lock. The screw for the lock bar insert, which it does have, it also doubles as the over travel, is on the inside. The head threads all the way through, and then they dome it off, which is a very classy way to do that. They've done it over here too, and they've actually kind of turned that into a stylized point there. It's really neat. Yeah, the stop pin, the closed position stop pin is actually here, which is nice. So these things don't actually touch the frame, so they're not going to mark it. And then like I said, the open position stops are here. There is no blade play at all, up, down, left, to right. No lock stick. I think you can see where the lockup percentage is. It's probably 30 to 40%. Yeah, there's your mark right there. It's actually closer to 50% engagement, which is fine. No lock stick, no hint of pivot lash. I think this will get smoother, but I think you should know, like, this does not feel like Wii special sauce action, right? And by the way, we didn't cover this. Front flipper action, it's okay. It could be better with more aggressive jimping, right? It's fine. It'll work. My favorite way to deploy it, is the studs, and I'd probably just ignore the front flipper's existence, but yeah. So this is really cool, and it's definitely Kizer going, we can make crazier stuff if we want to. The base price of this, which would be S90V and no compound. Oh, and by the way, it is centered. I mean, I took it apart and put it back together, so maybe it's slightly off. Is it? No, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. That's great. But anyways, entry-level price, no compound blade, S90V, $339. And then your most expensive would be the compound M390 blade at like $370, $380. So we're going to judge the base price of the entry model. It's okay. I think I would have liked to see this like right at 300, right? We're going to have people saying like 280. I'm trying to be fair, right? I don't want it's just like I said in the Knife Guy episode recently, like I'm not trying to give any companies any excuses for marking things up. I still want to hold them to reasonable price tags for what they're doing. Yes, you can get M390 and titanium knives for substantially less. I don't think that's a very good argument here because those knives tend to be very, very simple, right? So that argument tends to be based on what people care about or don't care about, not what this extra stuff costs. Like a plain, flat, non-contoured, non-textured, titanium frame lock with a simple flat ground drop point blade, right? Might be made out of the same materials, but has substantially less milling time and therefore costs substantially less to create. So the fact that it only costs $180 to $200 is like, well, yeah, that's why it costs that. It doesn't, So if that's all that you care about is the materials, and you don't care about the extra milling and stuff, then yeah, I would say buy the less expensive one. But if you want the extra, this extra is going to cost more money, right? Whether you care or not. Do I feel like $340 is the right price? No, I think about $300 versus what I've seen would have been like an excellent price. So it's a little high, but it's not like, oh my God, Why the M390 version costs more, I have no idea. I would say Kizer in the future, this is cool, and I expect to see more of the same. You guys need to offer your satin or your near mirror DLC, because that will go a long ways. I'm really surprised you guys didn't have a satin DLC version of this available. Like what you do with the Milita, that's a beautiful finish. That would be very, very cool. You guys also need like a higher polished, non-coated finish, because the machine satin or the belt satin, we still see that in the lower or the lesser tiers across the board from other companies. So having the thing stand out a little more in the blade finish, I think would also go a long ways if you're going to charge that much. But yeah, we're especially on the higher end of this, we're approaching like Chinese integral price, you know. And while there is a lot more complicated stuff going on with this knife, it's just like you're really getting up there, you know. So yeah, I would say this is pretty cool. I'm glad that Kizer is like creating an X series and like creating, you know, specialty stuff for their, you know, collector and enthusiast market. I mean, if you're buying a Kizer anyway, you're already in that territory. But for like the super fans who want the extra, I think this is really cool. It'll be interesting to see how this series evolves. This is not at all a bad way to introduce this series. I think this is pretty good. The action, okay, you know, should be a little better. Should be pretty much like glassy, buttery smooth. So I don't know if that's the roller bearings or if there's anything, but if I'm going to spend this much money today in 2025, you know, on a Chinese premium knife, like that action should be absolutely superior, you know, super duper smooth. So in my experience carrying this for just a little bit of time and flipping it probably a couple hundred times, it's not like absolute buttered glass. It's just pretty good, right? So neat, not something that people need to be rushing out and busting down doors for, but then again, it's not made for everybody. There's only 100 of them. So I think if you pick this knife up, if you spend the money on it and it comes to you, I think you're going to be really happy with it. But it's just definitely not for everybody. I cannot wait to see what else comes out of this Kizer X series line. But yeah, definitely offer the DLC near mirror finishes, colors, things like that, variety. People like that sort of personal. They want to pick their favorite color, pick their favorite look, you know, when they're spending that much money. So that'd be a good idea. But yeah, pretty good. It's a nice knife. Not for everybody, but not made for everybody. So anyways, please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.